a couple things that I do want to tell you. Individual lines, parallel lines, so they are all lined up. They will probably run into each other a little bit, but do your best to make them all go the same direction. One thing I do not want to see is a continuous line back and forth, okay? That's not what we want, all right? So make sure that we are doing individual lines. I'm going to pick up my HB. You're going to find a direction of line that works well for you and how you want to make your lines. I tend to make diagonal lines. You can do vertical, but I'm pressing not very hard to begin with, and I am really spacing my lines out. As I move to where it's going to get darker, I will start making my lines closer together. I can also use controlled pressure to just make my mark making a little bit darker. Now, HB, not going to change a whole lot, okay? It's going to be very little value change to begin with.
That's what you started with, right?
HB, yep, that's going to be our lightest pencil today. No 4H, no 2H. Once I'm done with HB, I'm going to pick up my 2B. Just like we did with our rendering, I am not going to start all the way over where it's lightest. I'm going to move over just a little bit, and I will do the same thing. Controlled pressure a little bit as I layer these. As I get to where it's supposed to be darker, more lines, heavier pressure. What's up, Easton?
Can I borrow the hairdryer for like 2 minutes?
Yep. I think is it on the countertop over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we move on to?
After what?
The first pencil, HB.
2B. Go in order, lightest to darkest. Once I'm done with 2B, 4B is my next darkest. I'm going to be starting right under the word hatch with my 4B. Start layering up these lines. You'll kind of see me rotate my pencil every once in a while to try to get onto like a sharper edge so I don't have to sharpen it all the time.
Where do you start the 2B? Where?
Somewhere in there. And 4B, I was about halfway.
Where would that
6B, even further back. Remember that you do not have to press very hard with 6B. It's a very dark pencil. Continue to layer those up. But again, we don't want a solid fill. We still want to see some of that paper in between. This is a textural technique, so we should see those individual lines. Ebony's just at the very end. Just going to put a few lines down here to make that last part darker. Now, when I'm making these lines, and I guess I should have mentioned this before, I am holding the pencil like I would be if I were writing. So it's closer to the point so that you can control that pressure a little bit more. And especially where we want those lines to be darker, we want to make sure we are controlling that So down here with characteristics, just a couple notes. So, big thing with this, parallel lines. And I'm going to kind of put that in quotes because as you can see on mine, and I'm sure you see in yours, they do cross a little bit, but they are traveling in somewhat the same direction. Oops, not lanes, lines. So, parallel lines. This is used for texture. So I'm just going to put texture there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to list the pencils that we used. So HB, 2B, 4B, 6B, and ebony. That's all the notes I'm putting on for this one. Once you're done taking notes, start drawing your forms in here. Very lightly, start with just HB. We should be able to get through all of them today. So again, we did it before. We can do it again. If you cannot see those angles just from looking at it, use your pencil. So, measure that angle there. Make sure it matches over here. Measure that bottom of that cube over here. Make sure it matches over here. Just try. We have drawn multiple cubes in here because we have all done 2-point perspective at this point. one that I did the other day right next to it because I want to try to match values. No, it's not going to look exactly the same because we're using lines instead of blending, okay? But I always want to have a reference next to me. If your cube turned out not really well from rendering, have this one next to you, okay? Either way, we're trying to match what's in here, okay? So I'm gonna start with my lightest side, which is over here on the left. We talked about it last week, how it's a little bit darker over here in this edge and gets lighter as it moves towards this edge. Whenever I'm making my lines, like I said, parallel lines, I want to be making them the same direction on each single side. So I am going to switch directions of lines when I go to my different sides here, but what I want to make sure I do is I want to pay attention to the direction of lines that are already there, okay? So I'm going to make a choice to either only make vertical lines here, or I'm going to make lines that are diagonal that go with these two lines. Either way you go about it will be fine, okay? So if you want to make verticals, make verticals. If you want to go with these lines here, do that. It's completely up to you. I'm going to go with verticals this time. I don't really like verticals, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to start my pencil where it's darkest, okay? Because wherever you put your pencil down is going to be darker than where you pick your pencil up, almost all the time. So I'm going to start where it's darkest, and I'm going to start with HB, start making some lines. Use pressure or lack of pressure to make things lighter. Layer it up where you need it a little bit darker. And I'm only going to be using HB on this side. I'm not going to go any darker. It's a very, very light side. So pay attention to your reference. Now that I'm done with that side, I'm going to move to the top. So the top we talked about last week as well is a little bit darker over here than it is over here. I'm going to put a pretty solid coverage of HB throughout the whole top though, okay? I am going to come in with 2B here. Now our line directions have changed. There's no verticals on the top, okay? So you are either going to make lines going this direction, or you're going to make lines going this direction. So depending on what two lines you want to match up with, up to you, okay? I'm going to make them go in this direction because that's where I accidentally made some lines already. I am still just using HB. Yep, we are going to go lighter to darker here. But for HB on the top, pretty solid coverage throughout because we're going to come in with 2B, like I said. Like I said, the top's still pretty light. The only other pencil I'm going to use on the top is going to be 2B. So I'm going to be ready for 2B. And just back here where it's darker, the only part that I'm going to be using my 2B on, same direction as my HB. Pressing a little bit harder so that There's a few darker lines up there, but I'm not going overboard.
Can you go over old lines?
Yep, they will layer up. Absolutely. After I have that little bit darker shadow towards that background, or towards the back of that cube, I'm done with the top. Alright, now for the other side of this cube, the right hand side, I'm not going to worry about HV. It's a very dark side of this cube, so I am going to just start with 2B here. I'm going to switch back to vertical lines on this, but you can either do vertical or you can make them run this direction. You make that choice. I'm going to switch back to vertical, just, I don't know, because the other side is. So I am starting with 2B on this side because it's dark. I'm not going to worry about the lighter pencil. So where it's going to be darker, I'm starting, that's where I'm putting my pencil down. Now you'll see me make vertical lines from the top and from the bottom. Do what you got to do. I'm not very good at making perfectly straight lines throughout that entire space, so I'm not going to do it. Do what you got to do. Just make sure that they are all the same direction. But I am putting 2B about the same value all the way through this side. I'm going to darken it with my other pencils. I'm going to get my 4B. Take a look at your reference picture. Look at where it needs to be darker, okay? Along these two edges is where it needs to get darker, and then it fades and gets lighter, okay? So this is where I'm concentrating. Most of my 4B is up here in this section. And yes, you are going to overlap some of your lines. If you notice that you're starting to fill too much space, the lines are getting too thick, sharpen your pencil. We should still see some paper in between. What? Only for the cast shadows. So only for back behind it on those shadows. For our forms, no. This is the first time many of you are using this technique. I'm not expecting perfection. I just want you to try. That's okay. All right, 6B. Now, where it's the very darkest, which is up in this top section of this cube, this is where I'm concentrating most of my 6B. But we still want that texture. Do not fill it in solid. So, I just finished with 6B. These darker pencils, just like with rendering, you're going to use those the least. Okay? that's easier to erase than ebony. If I mess up, I'm gonna sketch this shadow in. Whoop. And that's why I need to do that. Definitely did not get that drawn in right. Now, with my shadows, I like to make my marks in the direction that the shadow is traveling, okay? So it originates right underneath of my object. As it moves away, that's where I pick my pencil up. So I just kind of make my lines in that direction. Hold your pencil close to the sharpened end so you have control of where you put it down and where you pick it up. And get that shadow.
I know like that, but
You curved it?
yeah. They might like
Yeah. Ebony is supposed to be dark. Press hard.
look. They might like
Alright. Now we are moving on to our rounded forms. But good news with cylinders is they still have two vertical lines. So we can still make our lines straight for this. Okay? Now, with our cone, that's going to change, and with our sphere, that's going to change because we don't have straight vertical lines anymore. But with our cylinder, we can still make these straight vertical lines. Push it down, please. Alright. Now again, pay attention to where our shadows and our highlights are happening. With my HB, I am going to put almost so solid coverage except for where that highlight happens. Again, vertical lines. So I'm going to start where it's darker over here, make fewer and lighter lines as I move towards my highlight. And again, I will work from the top and the bottom just because I know I'm not going to make a very good vertical line all the way across that space. Then from the left, we do the same thing, it's just going to travel further. Where I know that shadow is going to be darker, putting way more lines. Going ahead and building up those values. I am also, while I have my HB in my hand, just going to put a few lines at the top. Just going vertical or horizontal with those, just to make that little bit of shadow on the top of that cylinder. I need to erase my outlines a little bit. They are too dark.
so they like doing like good lines at once or like big lines.
I didn't hear all that.
I like doing like little lines at a time, like even if it.
I am not going all the way across, so whenever I'm working, I'm usually kind of go from bottom, and then I'll come down and make good lines. Because, yeah, I'm not going to make good lines all the way up. They're not going to look right. Yeah. No, this is a very sketchy, very textural technique. It's not an exact science. But definitely make sure leave blank space for that highlight. Don't get that all shaded in.
And you said we're doing HB?
That's all I've used so far. just a tiny bit along that far right hand side. Not going to do a bunch just because I don't want it to get too dark too quickly. If I need to come back in and make a few more lines, I will. But for that little bitty shadow there, not much. Okay? We can come do more. We don't want to go too far too fast. Then I'm going to start over on this left side. Start making my lines. Again, I make lines from the top and from the bottom. I like the way my lines look better when I do that. And I can fill in the middle just a little bit. Just use 2B, 4B, not covering much space at all when I'm using my 4B, really just concentrating on this core shadow that's happening here. So I'm not moving to the edges at all, not moving towards my highlight at all, hardly at all. So really just concentrating on making that core shadow. This is 4B, yes. I need to clean that up a little bit. Now 6B. Very selective on where I'm putting that. Few lines right in that darkest shadow, core shadow. Not going overboard. Just putting a few in there. That 6B darkens it very, very quickly. We will layer and layer and layer these pencils. So again, make sure it's sharp. We want to see individual lines. These are not meant to be a full coverage technique. Shadow's going to be my last thing. Sketch it in. Sketched it with my 6B. Gonna apply it with my ebony though. Again, I like to make my lines move with the direction of my shadow. So I'll start right next to the form and move away from it. Cast shadows are the darkest area of any drawing, so that's why we used our darkest pencil. And we will really, really layer it so it's a dark value. Something that we're going to do with our cone is going to be a little bit different. We are going to be making what are called contour lines whenever we are working with our cone. So since we are only straight lines on our cone are these edges here, okay? So these are the only straight lines. The bottom is curved. If we try to make hatch lines, they are actually going to be kind of in a fan, okay? And they would end up running into each other right at the tip of this. So that's technically not parallel lines, okay? So we're going to do contour lines. Contour lines wrap around the object. They don't go straight, okay? So I want you guys to kind of watch what I do first so that I can show you how this is going to work. How is this going to work? Somewhere in there. We can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best. I need to erase that line first. I'm going to do my best to keep mimicking this rounded bottom down here. So where is my HB? So with my HB, I'm going to start kind of at the bottom here, and I'm going to start making these curved lines that wrap around the object towards the highlight. Okay, so there's just a slight curve that's going to happen. Straight lines flatten these three-dimensional objects. So the second you start making straight lines around here, you will start to flatten that object. So HB, start creating those contour lines except where that highlight happens. Contour lines, make it wrap around the object. So you can see there's a slight curve that happens when I'm making those lines. Just used HB so far. Gonna go to 2B. I'm gonna put a few lines with my 2B. Again, curved lines. And these are short little lines, so the curve's not gonna be too apparent. But I wanna start on the far edge. Layer just a few along that edge with my 2B. Again, look at the reference. It doesn't go up very far, so we don't want to overdo it. We can come in later with more if we need to, but we don't want to overdo how many lines we put in there. Then I'll work on my other shadow over here. Keep wrapping those lines around. Alright, when I start in with my 4B, so I've only done HB and 2B so far. Okay, when I start in with my 4B, I'm only going to be concentrating in this core shadow area. I'm not going to move to either edge. I don't want to make those any darker right now. So really just going to be focusing on this section right in here. If your pencils start getting dull, make sure you give them a sharpen. Stop. Six B, even less space. even though we are layering these up like this, you should still see a gradual value change. It shouldn't happen all at once. If you need to come back in and work with some 2B or even HB to bring some more values in, you can. You gotta work back and forth to get that gradual value change. Shadow's getting drawn in. Just a triangle. We will not get this finished before our cleanup bell goes off, but we should get it finished before the bell rings. So just keep working even if that starts going. Sphere is going to be the most difficult just because there's no straight lines anywhere. All of the marks you're making are going to be curved, which is sometimes kind of difficult. Your lines will intersect here, okay? There's no real way to get this to be like perfect where they are not going to run into each other. So what I tend to do is I do some wrapping lines around one side, and HB is where I start again, wrapping lines around the other side, these contour lines, connect them in the center. So with HB, I'm going to start these lines, and a lot of times hatching spheres looks messy to begin with. Then you'll clean it up as you layer it. I'm going to move to 2B. Focus a lot of that time into where it's darker. Come towards my highlight just a little bit, but again, curve those lines. To be. And sphere is definitely one that I've got to work back and forth quite a bit on. When I'm ready for my 4B, really focusing on this core shadow, this really dark area here. Don't forget about this reflected highlight that's on the right. Leave some space back here. That's a little bit darker. So 4B, really concentrating just on this section over here. 6B, even smaller amount of section. Don't pick up, we're gonna finish. Don't have much left. Hey Samantha, could you hop up and stop that alarm, please? I'm going to clean up my lines just a little bit before I put my shadow in. Please do not start getting up yet. People are still working and need to see the screen. Let's get our shadow drawn in. It's kind of an oval shape here. Ebony, I'm going to kind of stick with just horizontal lines here so that I can make those darker lines right underneath of my object. Let it fade as I move away.